The town of Willow Creek had long been a quiet, sleepy place, wrapped in the gentle folds of rolling hills and the dense green of ancient forests. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's name, where the sidewalks creaked under the footsteps of children playing hopscotch, and where the smell of fresh-baked bread from the corner bakery mingled with the earthy scent of the river after a spring rain. For generations, Willow Creek had thrived on its small industries and family farms, and its people had carried a quiet pride in the simplicity and beauty of their lives. But in recent years, that pride had begun to fade. The old mill, which once roared with the sound of production, had fallen silent. Families who had lived in the same houses for decades moved away in search of opportunity, leaving vacant homes with paint peeling and gardens overrun with weeds. Main Street, once vibrant with the chatter of neighbors and the clatter of shoes on wooden boards, now held more for sale signs than lights in the windows. Even the church bells, which had tolled for weddings, baptisms, and community gatherings, seemed to announce not joy, but a kind of mournful acknowledgement of the town's dwindling spirit. It was in the heart of this quiet despair, during a particularly misty autumn morning, that the deer first appeared. No one saw her at first. She moved silently through the edge of the forest, where the river curved lazily between towering oaks and maples. Her coat shone with the warmth of copper and chestnut, and on her forehead was a small white marking, faint but unmistakably shaped like a star. She stepped into the clearing with the softest touch of hooves on grass, moving as if she were part of the mist itself, a living wisp of calm and grace. The first person to notice her was young Sarah Miller, who lived at the edge of town near the riverbank. She had been walking along the path that morning, wrapped in her wool scarf, when she froze at the sight of the deer standing there, perfectly still, as if waiting for her. Sarah blinked several times, convinced her eyes were playing tricks on her, but the creature remained, her deep, dark eyes steady and knowing. For a long moment, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace settle over her, as if the deer were not merely an animal but a gentle messenger sent to remind the town of something it had forgotten. Then, slowly, she whispered, "Hello," and the deer tilted her head slightly, as though acknowledging the greeting. By the end of the week, more people had begun to notice her. Farmers walking their fields spotted her at dawn, her silhouette framed by the rising sun. Children peered from the schoolyard fence, eyes wide, and even Jim Peterson, the town's old mechanic, grumbled under his breath about folks getting carried away. Yet he too watched from his garage door, captivated by her quiet presence. She did not flee when approached. She did not make a sound. She simply moved with an elegance that no human could imitate, pausing now and then to nibble at the grass, to look around with ears twitching, listening to sounds humans could not hear. And as she wandered through the edges of the town, something began to change. People began to linger in their front yards, speaking to one another more freely than they had in months. Children shared their excitement about the star deer, passing the story along to friends and neighbors. Even the diner, which had been mostly empty since the factory closed, found a new stream of visitors, eager to catch a glimpse of the gentle creature that seemed to embody something bigger than themselves. Reverend Hayes, the town pastor, was the first to speak openly about what the deer might mean. One Sunday, he recounted the sightings to his congregation, his voice steady and calm, explaining that perhaps the deer was a reminder that grace could still be found in the world, even in places that had grown weary and tired. The townspeople listened, many with tears in their eyes, and slowly a sense of unity began to return. People began leaving small offerings near the edge of the woods, apples, carrots, even blankets of fallen leaves arranged carefully for her to find. Sometimes she accepted them, nibbling quietly, and other times she ignored them entirely, moving on with the same serene dignity that had first captured their hearts. And with each visit, the town's sense of hope grew a little stronger, as if the deer were carrying away their sadness on the silent strength of her steps. It wasn't long before the deer began appearing in more central parts of the town. One crisp morning, she walked into the square, pausing by the old war memorial, the sun catching her coat and highlighting the faint star-shaped mark on her forehead. Shopkeepers peered out from behind curtains and doors, hesitant to disturb her, but unable to look away. Children pressed their faces to the windows of the school and the diner, pointing excitedly. Even the mayor, a pragmatic man who rarely indulged in sentiment, stepped out of his office and stood quietly, realizing that the town's fascination was not mere superstition. And then one snowy evening the deer appeared beneath the warm glow of the lamppost outside the diner. Snowflakes caught in her fur, her breath rising in small clouds, she seemed to embody the very spirit of the town, resilient, patient, and quietly miraculous. Families who had been cooped up by the cold winter gathered by the windows, sharing a collective sense of wonder, and for a brief, perfect moment, the struggles and hardships of the past year seemed to melt away. By spring, the deer had become a part of the town's life. Murals appeared on walls, painted by local artists who wanted to capture her beauty and grace. Children wrote stories and poems about her in school, imagining her as a guardian, a gentle teacher of hope. People who had once been distant and withdrawn began greeting each other again, exchanging smiles and small gestures of kindness. The town was awakening from its long slumber, and the deer was at the heart of it all, moving through streets and fields with quiet wisdom, reminding everyone that life, even when weighed down by difficulty, could still hold moments of wonder. As the months passed, word of the star deer spread beyond Willow Creek. Visitors came from nearby towns, eager to see her and hear the story. Some came with cameras, others with simple curiosity, and all left carrying a sense of awe and inspiration. But despite the attention, the deer remained herself, independent, graceful, and untamed. She was not a pet nor a spectacle. She was a living symbol of hope, a reminder that beauty could exist in unexpected places, and that sometimes the smallest presence could have the largest impact on hearts and minds. And so the deer continued to wander, always appearing at dawn or dusk, always moving with purpose and quiet dignity. She brought a renewed sense of life to Willow Creek, reminding the town's people that hope could flourish even in the darkest times, and that every small act of care and attention, whether an apple left for her, a mural painted on a wall, or a simple smile exchanged, could ripple outward and change the world in ways too subtle to measure, but too profound to ignore. As spring gave way to summer, Willow Creek seemed almost reborn. The deer had become more than a creature wandering the edges of the town. She was a presence that shaped the rhythm of life itself. Children woke each morning hopping for a glimpse of her near the river, farmers paused in their fields to watch her move among the cornstalks, and even the old mechanic, Jim Peterson, had begun leaving scraps of apple near the garage steps, a small gesture of respect for her gentle visits. The town had learned to slow down, to pay attention, and in doing so, it had discovered that life still held wonder. But with beauty and peace often comes attention, and not all attention is kind. News of the star deer of Willow Creek spread beyond the valley, reaching hunters, wildlife enthusiasts, and curious strangers. Some came with the best intentions, to photograph, to observe, to celebrate her grace. Others were less considerate, their interest tinged with greed or the thrill of pursuit. The deer, who had once moved freely through the woods without fear, now found herself wary of new faces and unfamiliar noises. The townspeople noticed her unease immediately. She began hesitating at the edge of the woods, lingering longer in areas where she had previously been comfortable. Children who once ran toward her with innocent excitement now learned to keep a respectful distance, and parents warned them gently not to chase her. The mayor convened a small council to discuss ways to protect her, and Reverend Hayes spoke at church about the importance of stewardship and responsibility. Slowly, the town formed a plan. Signs were posted along the main roads, reminding visitors that the deer was wild and should not be approached, and volunteers took turns monitoring the woods to ensure she remained safe. Despite the growing attention, the deer continued her quiet visits, always moving with her characteristic grace. She appeared one morning near the school playground, standing among the swings and slides as if observing the children from a distance. They waved shyly, and she tilted her head in acknowledgement before stepping softly back toward the trees. That day, a teacher told the students that the deer was a reminder that kindness and patience were powerful forces, and that respect for others, human or animal, was part of what made their town special. The children listened, captivated not only by the lesson but by the living example before them. One hot July afternoon, the deer ventured into the heart of the town square. The sun cast long shadows, and the air was heavy with the scent of fresh-cut grass and baking bread. People paused,